Hey Chelsea, it's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and thank you so very much for being here. You see, I
It's
truly appreciate it. Yeah, and you see, oftentimes, Chelsea, I love to thank my guest for two things, and I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, Chelsea, I want to say thank you for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes, Jose, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Jose, just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately, I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. Oh boy, it was a beautiful moment, I tell you. There is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Chelsea that you are today, that alone has made it really impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you see you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing. Your insight, your philosophies, and your solution. It's amazing. And just before you got the request from me, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things that Chelsea is doing, not only me now, but even the audience. And here we are today with the amazing Chelsea. So thank you so very much for investing in yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing I could do about it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful.
So, so let's get started. You see, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today for, let's see, two reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Chelsea, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge now, but the application of it. And ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very, very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Chelsea on the show is for the sake of the audience. See, Chelsea, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Chelsea, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Chelsea got here. Then afterwards, I've got some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Chelsea,
Okay.
over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that really beautiful introduction and story. So it's a good segue kind of into what I do. So I'm professionally a storyteller, and but I work in the realm of communications. And I do apologize if my dogs are distracting in the background. Just one second. Hey, stop. My apologies. So I work in communications. I've been doing this work for over a decade, strategic communications. And really through this time, especially in the context that I work currently, which is military, it's allowed me to really see that many of the systems that we rely upon to communicate are broken. I don't think that that's really news to anyone. But along my journey, I discovered breath work. And so I had my own spiritual awakening journey, my own journey towards healing. and learning. So that journey through the darkness to find the light. And through that journey, I realized that breathwork is actually really critical to this work, because what I find myself drawn to in the work that I do now is really about not just achieving sovereign consciousness in a world that really wants to erode our ability to think critically and create it from a place of sovereignty. And of course, sovereignty and spirituality is very, very critical. The kingdom within and that sort of thing. But also the ability for creators to build sovereign influence and reach their audiences in a way that is sovereign and not dependent on systems that actually seek to erode sovereignty. And then that leads into sovereign systems. So examining critically social media platforms and algorithms that sort of manipulate perception, and they really engineer duality and polarization in our world to create us versus them narratives where the truth is always found in that sacred middle way. And so that's kind of really what led me to where I am now. And so I've created the Sovereign Shift. So it is both business, but also a movement that I would really like to usher in to really put power back in the hands of the individuals. And that starts and ends with personal sovereignty and our ability to self-regulate in order to give us the ability to think critically and discern truth amidst the layered illusion that we see online on social media as well. Well, actually, primarily. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I tell you, it did. It's amazing. But okay, the sovereign shift right now, I'm still a bit curious. Can you tell us more? Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sovereign Shift is my website. It's basically the movement. It's basically it's a system that aims to infuse sovereignty, empower sovereignty in the hands of the individual. But it's also through that. Well, there's basically three pillars, right? So sovereign consciousness, that has to come from a place of self-regulation and truth discernment. And so I actually have available for free on my website what I call the Sacred Question Index. And so it comes with a free 15-minute breathwork journey. And what that basically does is gives you the ability to take that breath, to ask sovereign questions that are not only critical for our spiritual development and spiritual awakening, but also there's a 3-level propaganda discernment system built in there as well. So it takes individuals through the 3 different levels of propaganda discernment to help arrive at a truth. And so this is really critical right now, especially in the United States, especially in Canada. Honestly, everywhere you find social media platforms, right? It's almost impossible sometimes to figure out what the truth actually is amidst the noise, the competing narratives, the engineered duality and polarization. And it's driving a further wedge in our societies. Because when you take a winning team like Canada and the US, for example, that's a team, and you drive a wedge between them, now you've just created an us versus them. And that's the easiest way to consolidate and centralize power. It's an inverse compound interest game. And so that's kind of the first step. The second step that I kind of focus on through the Sovereign Shift is teaching people how to build sovereign influence. And so for business owners, creators, thought leaders, individuals who currently use social media to get their message out there, that's not really a sovereign way to do it, because you're in a content creation hamster wheel that's imposed upon you by the systems you use, Instagram, Facebook, X. There's the whole, okay, we must post consistently, we have to use this formula, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's the promise of visibility, which is illusory. It's illusory, and it's basically creates the used among the users, right? They're free platforms, but they're not actually free, right? That wealth and data is extracted, manipulation is engineered. So same with perception. And so for people who are spiritual entrepreneurs, for example, right, if you're using these platforms to put out your message, what are you really doing, right? These platforms are polluted, right? They are extremely corrupt. We are seeing evidence of that pile up more and more and more. And there's a famed Canadian philosopher slash father of modern communications, Marshall McLuhan. He coined the term, the medium is the message. Right. And so if the medium is the message, then no matter how beautiful or well-intentioned your message, if it's taking place in a medium that is corrupt and polluted, your beautiful message is corrupted by proximity. And that is a shame, because there's amazing and beautiful people doing amazing and beautiful work for the collective on these platforms. And this is why I'm making it my mission to help people build their influence and build audiences and speak to their audiences that in a way that is not beholden to black box algorithms that we cannot scrutinize, that seek to divide and ultimately extract wealth from the creators. Yes, people have made money off social media, absolutely. But if we continue to point to the one good thing that it's done for a handful of creators, that's not good enough. We cannot defend a corrupt system by saying, oh, well, it worked for this person. That's just not good enough. People deserve better. People deserve better. Creators deserve better. The collective deserves better. And then the final thing that the Sovereign Shift aims to do is exactly that. So it's calling into question these platforms and the fact that there is no viable alternatives for them, and that all technology companies seem to be consolidated in the United States, and is effectively part of this global digital empire that United States technology has built while the world thought it was a great idea. Except, what happens when power and technology is centralized? There's not very many options out there. And so part of the Sovereign Shift for me is also, especially now more than ever, is to make a call to not just Canadian technologists to come up with a viable alternative to these platforms, because countries all over the world rely on US platforms to communicate with their own audiences. That's very, very problematic. But just for United States citizens as well, right? Like the fact that there's really no oversight to how these platforms are used and abused, and creating division in your own society should be called into question. The fact is that these platforms are global entities and thus need to respond to oversight that happens that isn't centralized to one nation, especially if the whole world uses them. And so that's a big ethical component as well. So the Sovereign Shift aims to give people the tools that they need to think critically and reclaim their personal sovereignty. I aim to help business owners and creators build sovereign influence outside the matrix, the algorithms and social media platforms. And then I also want to get people talking about the ethics involved with the centralization of power when it pertains to these social media platforms. So that, in a nutshell, is the Sovereign Shift.
Mhm. Amazing. Wow. You see, you just opened my eyes to a series of things now, and I love it. Okay, so, well, I still have like two more questions to go. All right. So, how then can someone build influence without social media in today's world?
That's a really, really great question. And I think it starts with what we personally really assume when we're talking about social media, because the assumption is that when we post on social media, that we have an opportunity to go viral immediately and get known overnight, and everybody's going to see our stuff. That's just not how it works. Social media is actually a really long game, but it comes with the story that, oh, it's a really short game. And so let's just call that out right away. That's just a tremendous lie that it sold you. And so when we're actually talking about building real influence, not just go viral within a corrupt medium nonsense, We're talking about building quality, long-term thought leadership. Not just thought leadership, but also if you're like an artist and that sort of thing, it's finding alternative platforms to push your stuff and putting it out everywhere. So I call it the breadcrumb effect. So thanks to AI, you're able to actually repurpose a lot of content for you in a very short amount of time. You can collapse time, actually. And when you use a breadcrumb effect to build influence, you're looking at platforms like the Substacks, the Mediums, the long form, more trusted platforms to put your stuff out there to reach your audiences. And so when you create this sort of network effect, you're eventually going to become inevitable for your audience, right? So this is kind of more thinking about marketing and communications in terms of resonance. And so if you go on to Google or Bing or whatever, and you're searching let's say you're a service provider and your target audience, you know what they're struggling with, those pain points, exactly the transformation that you want to provide for them. You've now published content kind of all over the internet that forms the backlog of your catalog, right? That's the foundation. So it takes time. It takes time. It is a long game building influence, because that's how life works. It takes time to build trust. How do people know to trust you? Well, because you can point to, this is what I've done. This is what I've published. The internet, for good or bad, right? It's got its own issues and algorithmic, that type of thing, but it's what we're working with, right? It's the system that we're working within. And so I'm not here to say that the internet is bad. I'm here to say that it is what it is. Here's how you build influence that's not restricted to just one platform. Because the other thing with social media too is that if something changes, if they think that you've, violated some random aspect of your terms of service, accounts get deleted overnight. They get hacked all the time. People lose all of their audiences. You actually don't own your audiences anyway on social media. And so that's a really big factor as well. And so basically, I do have like a whole system, a playbook that I'm able to generate based on the individual's business, values, goals, what exactly the transformation that they provide. It's a very, very long intake questionnaire that I take and I compile, and I create a custom made playbook for that individual or that business to help them, like give them an actual exact step-by-step roadmap how to build that influence. And one of the best ways that I know of is the breadcrumb effect. Like I've said, I like to call it the Morpheus protocol, because Morpheus is everywhere, right? That's kind of the goal. And unfortunately, one of the illusions as well is that, okay, well, if you're everywhere, then you're nowhere. But that's just not true, especially if we're repurposing quality content and thought leadership, and we're dispersing it in all the different types of places that will get picked up strategically by search engines. Even if you've got stuff on YouTube is a search engine primarily, right? Same with Pinterest. So there's a lot of different ways to use many different platforms strategically at the same time that will actually deliver more and better results while building trust for you in the meantime than social media.
Got it. That's very, very insightful, and thank you for sharing that with us. So, to bring this to an end, Chelsea, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed, or even ask questions, how can that be possible?
Well, if they want to reach me, my website is thesovereignshift.ca. And the final thought that I will leave your audience with, I always bring this back to breathwork. Why, for me, it's been such an amazing, life-changing and healing modality is because it's what first taught me that I was a sovereign being. Because everything that you have to heal is right here. The universe began with a breath. And so when we are caught in the world right now, which is so confusing and it can be so triggering and scary, and people are just really not sure where to find their footing. The best way to do that is to take a breath, to do breath work, to just take a few minutes to center yourself and come home to that kingdom within, right? That's that personal power, that sovereignty that we've really forgotten about, that present moment. And when we start there, everything else that we do, every decision that we make, every thought that we think, each act we take, I mean, it's coming from a place of sovereignty. And so it's why, as well, available on my website, I have lots of free resources, free breathwork audios for download for any individual that wants to give that a try as well.
Awesome. So that's going to be the end of the show, Chelsea. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this beautiful stuff with us. It means a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a privilege.